Crystalina, a fairy tale by John Milton Harney. This is a poem. Canto I. Beneath a mountain whose stupendous head defied the four winds of the firmament, a gallant knight in glittering arms arrayed, his daring soul on bold adventure bent, checked his proud steed with smoking foam besprent, for lo, a cavern in his way appeared, near which a hermit told his bead's intent, a mystic sage, for magic powers revered. Tall was his aged frame, and white his waving beard. With lowly reverence bowed the courteous knight, and thus addressed the hoary anchorite. Hail, mighty seer, think not with purpose rude I thus invade your holy solitude. A wretched wanderer in a foreign land, I seek the sage and reverend Altagrand. Far in yon vale, recumbent on a rock, I found a shepherd piping to his flock. Him having questioned, fearfully he told that hereabout that necromancer old dwelt in his rocky mountain, all forlorn, mid hanging cliffs and forests tempest torn. This place, that look, and hoary head bespeak thyself the venerable man I seek. I am that seer, this wilderness my home, and stately stranger, whensoe'er you come, know that the good, the noble, and the brave are ever welcome to my mountain cave. Dismount, the sun has finished his career, and in the west the signs of storms appear. Thus spake the seer, and as Rinaldo sprang from his tired steed, his ponderous armor rang. And now the sun o'er occidental seas had reached the gardens of the Hesperides, where he paused his retroverted gaze, set all the clouds behind him in a blaze, which night, advancing up the eastern sky, in dusky pomp, beheld with sparkling eye. Behind the hills she stayed her ebon car, withheld her moon, and muffled every star, resigned her empire to the lingering day, silenced her owls, and called her ghosts away. Slow to his silent subterranean ball, the hoary hermit led the warrior tall. Huge was his cave, and gloomy to the sight, though rudely decked with petrifactions white. A magic rock, which glowed with quenchless fire, illumined the dwelling of the hoary sire, and all around diffused a grateful heat, when wintry tempests on the mountain beat. Upon the wall his rusty armor hung, and by its side an aged lyre unstrung. His bed was moss, and pillow there was none. His seat was marble, and his table stone. But fain to serve and cheer his nightly guest, the holy father spread the scanty feast, talked of glories and the toils of war, of knights heroic, and of ladies fair. But still Rinaldo paced the cavern dread, with changeful visage and disordered tread. Oft from his cheek he wiped the obtrusive tear, heaved the deep groan, and grasped his quivering spear, like mad Orestes, whom the Furies tore, or great Alcides, who on Oeta wore the hoary tunic dipped in Nessus' gore. The hoary hermit with paternal eye marked in his face the smothered agony which racked his soul, and with balsamic words, such as to Christians holy writ affords, essayed to soothe the tortures of his heart. But what avails the officious surgeon's art to oil the wound and not extract the dart? Talk not of comfort, cried the impatient knight. Oh, mock me not with prospects of delight. Like Tantalus, I pant upon the brink of gushing fountains I must never drink. I find no comfort but in tears and sighs, no sorrows but in recollected joys. Yet hear my tale, and though thou canst not cure, 'twill soothe my sorrows to recount them o'er. Thrice has yon moon her pearly chariot driven, crossed the starry wilderness of heaven. In lonely grandeur, thrice the morning star danced on the eastern hills before Hyperion's car. Since thee to find, I reach this distant shore, thy magic aid and counsel to implore. A knight am I, my occupation war, my home an isle beneath a southern star. Through stormy seas I've sought 3 tedious years, this land renowned for necromantic seers. For well 'tis known the powers of air and hell obey the wizard in his magic cell. That fairy fiends who hold at midnight hour their moonlight orgies own his secret power, that tempests rage, obedient to his wand, and spectres rise and sepulchres expand. Such magic power my wretched state demands, and such I seek, O hermit, at thy hands. If knighthood ever to thy heart was dear, attend my story with a propitious ear. For though thou scorn'st man's dignities and names, his grief is sacred, and attention claims. Unfold thy tale, the grey wand-bearer cried. My aid to virtue never was denied, nor e'er can be, with knighthood when allied. For arms and knighthood still my thoughts engage, though bleached these locks with 70 winters' rage. Oh, I have seen contending armies close with horrid shock, seen knights to knights oppose their clanging shields and mix their deadly blows. And I have fought, and heroes of renown in tournament and battle overthrown. Feared by the thought, the old man showed his scars, received in old and memorable wars. O'er his white cheek the sudden crimson flies, and martial joy relumes his faded eyes. With eager grasp Rinaldo's hand he took, and fired with sympathetic ardor, spoke. Unfold thy sorrows, and if magic spell, if incantations horrible and fell, that rive the tomb and sway the powers of hell, can aught avail thy purpose to fulfill, command my counsel and my utmost skill. Sage father, thus the grateful youth began, and bowed obsequious to the hoary man. Far in the sea, beneath a heaven serene, an island smiles, forever fair and green. And in that fair island happiest shepherds rove, and save the sweet inquietudes of love. No troubles know, but under pendant rocks mellow pipes enchant their listening flocks. Their arm grand, a pious monarch reigns, and o'er the isle a gentle sway maintains. To him his beauteous Isabella bore, the blooming, virtuous princess I adore. Fair Crystalina, whom we call erewhile the tutelary angel of our isle, whose name's in every heart, on every tongue, the warrior's watchword and the shepherd's song, who ruled unconscious wheresoe'er she went. The happy shepherds ruled omnipotent, her smile and frown, reward and punishment. I loved the maid, her virgin hand I sought, but sighs, nor tears, nor prayers availed me aught. Thus spake the fair, wouldst thou my hand obtain? Woo me, Rinaldo, on the embattled plain. Thou hast my heart, but there my hand must gain. For glory then in foreign fields I fought, saw thrones demolished, kings to ruin brought, plucked laurel wreaths in danger's bloody path, mocked pain and grew familiar with grim death. The wars now o'er, I sought the mermaid isle, to claim the prize of all my pain and toil. Sweet was the hour I left the foreign strand, and spread the sail to seek that blessed land. And all my perils, all my cares were o'er, my fears behind me and my hopes before. While stars unclouded and propitious gales our voyage guided and impelled our sails, green-clad isle I soon and safely found, with joy elated and with glory crowned. I climbed the cliffs I passed the fragrant grove, and reached the splendid palace of my love. On spire and turret glanced the setting sun, and the proud pile in all its glory shone, while groves of myrtle glimmered on my sight, and from their foliage shook a quivering light. But perched beneath I saw a widowed dove, whose plaintive wailings saddened all the grove. I saw an eagle on the flock descend, seize a white lambkin, and in pieces rend. From the bare bough of a mouldering oak, a raven hailed me with portentous croak. Sad signs, that like an unexpected cloud on hope's fair prospects cast a frightful shroud. And all seemed sad, though lovely to my eye. I trembled, sighed, and wept, I scarce knew why. The wild birds' warblings, musical and clear, seemed mournful dirges to my listening ear. But on I hurried through the palace gate, defied adversity, and challenged fate. And now the king came forth with tottering haste, with temples grey and pale disordered face. "Welcome, Rinaldo, to thy home and friend," he feebly spake, and reached his trembling hand. Cold was that hand, and pale his aged cheek, and thrice he strove, but strove in vain, to speak. "Ah, why," he cried, "that sad portentous mien? How fares thy daughter? How my gracious queen?" Then gushed his tears, and suddenly arise convulsive sobs and suffocating sighs, while sad and slow his mournful hall we sought, my soul with dreadful expectations fraught. With hope and fear's alternate way I shook, as round the hall I cast a frantic look. There Isabella poured her melting moan, and wrung her white hands, tearful and alone, as Etna, swollen with sulphurous vapor, quakes. Then, as a cloud surcharged with thunder breaks, convulsed with grief, my laboring bosom burst. O wretched state! O destiny accursed! "And she is gone, forever gone," I said. "Oh, is my love, my Crystalina, dead?" "Kind heaven forbid," the mournful king replies, clasps his pale hands and lifts his suppliant eyes. "But she is gone, alas, we know not where, and we are left the victims of despair. 9 days have passed, 9 sad and tedious days, since last I saw my Crystalina's face. An evening's sweet and tranquil hour, the maid in yon gay garden unattended strayed, as oft she did, to spend the sultry hours in breezy groves and paradisian bowers. I saw her go, and gazed with fond delight, till clustering flowers concealed her from my sight. Yea, I gazed, and thought the flowery way where she had walked grew lovelier and more gay. Among the arbors and the pleasant bowers, with woodbine shaded and perfumed with flowers, I heard her voice, how soft, how sweetly wild. With secret joy I listened and I smiled, and thanked the Eternal for so sweet a child. But night came on, the hollow winds 'gan roar, and Crystalina, she returned no more. No more I'll hear her voice, no more behold her eyes of azure and her locks of gold. Ah, who remains my sorrows to assuage, and cheer the dismal solitude of age? To scatter roses on the dreary path that leads me down to darkness and to death. "Oh, fly, my son," the afflicted father said, "explore the isle, the world, to find the maid. Let her once more in these fond arms recline, and be our wealth, our crown, the princess thine." Scarce had he spoke, when frantic with despair, I spurred away to seek the royal fair, o'er many a mountain, many a plain and dell, where tigers prowl and fierce hyenas yell, where'er the foot of mortal man has trode, or wild beasts made their horrible abode, and cities thronged and wilderness forlorn, from morn till night, from night till cheerless morn. with sleepless toil and unremitting pain. I sought the maid, but sought, alas, in vain. At length I heard that in this wizard land, housed in deep caverns, scooped by nature's hand, where mountains huge and rushing storms deride, had turned the glancing thunderbolts aside, a race reposed in awful solitude, with magic powers by heaven or hell endued. Therefore I braved the wide tempestuous sea, and pierced this howling wilderness to thee. And tell, thou hoary necromancer, tell, if she still lives, oh, save ill or well, though watched by Argus, by enchantments bound, and girt by walls of adamant around. I'll set her free, or in the effort fall. Speak, hoary hermit, and inform me all. Thus spake Rinaldo to the mighty seer of sky's famed isle, cavern deep and drear. The seer sat mute and awfully serene, with light prophetic shone his haggard mien. He moved not, breathed not, but with steadfast eye he seemed to hold communion with the sky and pierce the depths of dim futurity. But soon he started from his frightful trance, and seized his wand. Rinaldo seized his lance, blushed anon, and chid his hasty fear, and false suspicion of the holy seer. Thrice with his wand the hermit smote the ground, and thrice the earth returned a hollow sound. Then yawning wide, forth streamed a livid flame, and in the midst a fiery demon came. How black he stood, and fearful to behold. Fiercely round his fiery eyeballs rolled, like shooting meteors in a dusky glen, or rushlights hovering o'er an oozy fen. Ghastly he grinned, unsheathed his talons bare, writhed his huge frame, and shook his snaky hair, flapped his black wings, and brushed the creeping flame from his grim face and salamander frame. And with hoarse voice the horrid demon spake, "Why callest thou Mahu from the brimstone lake?" The seer replied, "I charge thee by this wand, list and obey thy master's dread command. A monarch's daughter, Crystalina fair, her father's comfort and his only heir, has strangely vanished, has been sought in vain through all the world, with peril and with pain. Fly, fiend, I charge thee, find that royal fair, then back return, and her abode declare. That you may know her, take this magic ring, the perfect emblem of each perfect thing, the potent charm on each fair finger place. On hands impure 'twill seem a metal base, on some 'tis silver, and on some 'tis lead, but on the finger of the royal maid, and hers alone remember, you'll behold, from basest metal 'twill be changed to gold. Fly, demon, fly!" Thus spake the dreadful seer, and horrid echoes filled the cavern drear. The phantom fled, quick close the yawning ground, an earthquake shook the wilderness profound. The mountain reeled, and from its tossing head the frighted tiger and the wild wolf fled, whilst loosened rocks came tumbling from on high, and blazing meteors shot athwart the sky. Awhile the seer, with stern, unaltered face, surveyed, unmoved, the horrors of the place. Then from the wall his aged harp he took, string after string with solemn hand he strook. With low, wild prelude, gently he began, and o'er the chords with careless fingers ran. But when Rinaldo leaned his anxious ear, the old man's magic minstrelsy to hear, with bolder hand the necromantic sage waked loftier tones and roused poetic rage, till on the harp, impatient of control, impetuous rushed the tempest of his soul. So from some mountain's high and hoary brow a loosened crag starts silently and slow, but gaining force, more furiously it bounds. The mountain thunders and the vale resounds. The vaulted roof and dark recesses rung, as wildly the hoary minstrel sung. On sweet May Eve, when groves were green, and wild birds chanted merrily, when the air was calm, the sky serene, it was a lady of high degree, as she sat underneath a greenwood tree. Oh, she waited there for her dear knight, but the sun had set, the birds were mute, the dark wolf howled on the mountain height, the raven croaked, the owl did hoot, and pale red meteors round her shoot. Oh, oft she gazed and oft she sighed, oft listened for Alonso's tread. Why tarries thus, my love, she cried. The hour, the appointed hour has fled. The night dew chills my houseless head. Ah, why did I believe his tale, and leave my father's castle gay, to meet him in this secret vale? Or why, ah, why does Alonso stay? 'Tis night, and the castle is far away. But hark, a distant voice I hear. 'Tis not my love, but the night owl's cry. Thus wails Serena, wild with fear. Her raven locks on the night winds fly. Her breath is quick, and her heart beats high. Now the sky grew black, the winds blew loud, the lightning gleamed on the dusky vale, and thunder spoke from his deep blue cloud. Up rose Serena, wild and pale, and shrieked and fled through the stormy gale. But when she reached a lonely glade, where white briars rude and thistles stood, a ghastly fiend her eyes surveyed. It beckoned her to a gloomy wood. "'Tis my love," she cried, and swift pursued. It led the maid to a cavern deep, but on the gulf the lightning glared. Before she took the fatal leap, the spectre laughed and disappeared. But the banshee's fatal scream she heard. And she heard in her ear a death bell toll, and the raven croak on a blasted tree. The Lord have mercy on her soul. It was a piteous sight to see the sorrows of that sweet lady. And now adown that dusky glen she chased the fell rush light. It led her to a watery fen, and shrieked and quenched its taper bright. And all was horror, all was night. And now strange voices fill the air, and yells and shouts both loud and long. Ah fly, distracted fair, for fierce and fast the fiends come on, and see, grim phantoms round thee throng. Serena fled, in vain fled she, the ghastly crew met her blasted view, and a black fiend spoke, and fierce spoke he, as his arms round her snow-white neck he threw. "We, lady fair, are the elfin crew. Thrice welcome to our merry glen, and thou shalt be our mistress bright, and dance with us on the quaking fen, to the rushlight's red and glimmering light, when tempests howl at dead of night." They grasped her hard by her tender hand, they dragged her away by her raven hair. Her shrieks were loud, but the ghastly band to a stormy heath led the lady fair, and bared her breast to the driving air. On the stormy heath a ring they form, they place therein the fearful maid, and round her dance in the howling storm. The winds beat hard on her lovely head, but she clasped her hands and nothing said. Oh, 'twas, I ween, a ghastly sight, to see their uncouth revelry. The lightning was their taper bright, the thunder was the melody, to which they danced with horrid glee. Fierce-eyed owl did on them scowl, the bat played round on leathern wing, the coal-black wolf did at them howl, the coal-black raven did croak and sing, and o'er them flap his dusky wing. An earthquake heaved beneath their feet, pale meteors revelled in the sky, clouds sailed by like a routed fleet, the night winds shrieked as they passed by, the dark red moon was eclipsed on high. But hark, what voice as thunder loud now shakes the wilderness profound, whose form appears so tall and proud, beneath whose footstep quakes the ground, and whose bright armor gleams around. Oh, 'tis Alonso true and brave, and loud he calls on his true love's name. He comes the maid to save, through thunder, lightning, wind, and rain, with a buckler broad and sword of flame. Alonso spied his lady fair, he spied her amid that ghastly crew. He spurred his steed and couched his spear, but the holy cross upon his breast they knew, and shrieked, and away like lightning flew. And hast thou come? Cried the lady bright. Alonso comes, the knight replied, to keep his promise with thee tonight. For spite of thy father's cruel pride, sweet lady, thou shalt be my bride. He spoke and mounted his foamy steed. He took his lady fair behind, and away they rode to their bridal bed, more swiftly than the mountain hind, when the hunter's cry is on the wind. But all that night raved the tempest dire, a thunder shaft on the castle fell, of dark Almanzor, the lady's sire, and the winds all night rung his castle bell. They rung it loud for Almanzor's knell. Thus sang the hermit to his wizard lyre, with thrilling voice and eyes that sparkled fire. Through all his dark and subterranean halls the music rang, and on the dusky walls unearthly phantoms danced with frantic air, glared on the night and shook their snaky hair. But when he ceased above, below, around, was seen no phantom, and was heard no sound. Deep silence reigned, so still, so deep and dread, that they might hear the fairies' lightest tread, might hear the spider as he wove his snare from rock to rock, or snails soft creeping there. When lo, a trembling seized the solid earth, it yawned, and Mahu, horrid form, came forth. Sullen he spoke, on earth and in the main, north, south, east, west, on mountain, dale, and plain, among the living and among the dead, on lightning wings I flew. I sought the maid, I searched the palace and the dungeon lone, the secret desert and the peopled town, and not alone I searched the abodes of men, but the grim lions and the tiger's den, roused fierce hyenas from their bloody lair, and sought in vain thy Crystalina there. I searched the churchyard, harbor of the dead, viewed each cold corpse upon his wormy bed, in charnel houses, in putrescent tombs, amid corruption and horrific glooms. I searched the ocean's dark sepulchral waves, mid wreckful shoals and rocks and dismal caves, where shivered ships with all their shining load the sandy depths of aged ocean strewed. There many a grinning skeleton was laid, whose brainless skull the unsightly lobster made his citadel, oft peering forth, dismayed at the huge whales that round about him played. But by thy wand, O Alta Grand, I swear, the maid is not in ocean, earth, or air. And she's in heaven, the frantic lover said, and as he spake the hell-born phantom fled. Say, holy seer, is all thy magic lore exhausted now, or hast thou yet in store some potent spell which can unite again the scattered atoms of the mouldered frame? Or canst thou not, like Endor's witch, control the world of spirits and remand the soul? Oh, if thou canst, exert thy magic might, and once again restore her to my sight. Doubt not my power, exclaimed the wizard grey. More potent spirits my command obey than swarthy Mahu, spirits of the air, who make the inhabitants of earth their care. The hermit paused, and from his bosom took, with trembling hand, a coal-black magic book. As from his bosom that black book he drew, Rinaldo saw the spell-struck lamp turn blue. Shrieks, whispers, groans, and laughter still more dread the cavern filled, and lightning dismal red, and bursting thunder shook the frighted land, when first the magic volume did expand. Far down the vale and up the mountain's height were heard strange sounds of horror and affright. A lone owl hooted on his wizard oak, and screamed the leopard from his caverned rock. A moment only gazed the awful sage upon that wondrous hieroglyphic page, that page replete with cabalistic lore, Some spell he conned of wonder-working power, and closed it fast, and lo, the troubled air and rocking earth grew tranquil, still, and fair. His ebon wand the awful hermit took, thrice the lyre with gentle hand he shook. From the touched lyre a soft bewildered sound of doubtful tones fell murmuring around. Rinaldo stood enchained with sweet surprise, with ravished ears and fascinated eyes, while from the gleaming lyre distinctly fell these warbled words with sounds angelical, these quivering chords with light mysterious glow, and all around a silver lustre throw. But hark the voice, it speaks, it sweetly sings, and viewless fingers touch the tuneful strings. All in her garden Crystalina lay, beneath a bower adorned with blossoms gay, and sweetly slumbered on an evil day. The luscious woodbine all around her threw its fragrant blossoms and ambrosial dew. On every side nectarine flowers were spread, the plumy birds sang sweetly o'er her head, while amorous zephyrs o'er her bosom fair played wantonly and curled her golden hair. Flora she seemed, reposing mid her flowers, or Venus slumbering in Idalian bowers. On either cheek celestial roses shone, such as Aurora blushes when the sun at morn salutes her with a glowing kiss, and heaven and earth and ocean smile with bliss. As thus alone the sleeping virgin lay on couch of roses, charmed with visions gay, the fairy monarch thither chanced to stray, and he saw the maid, and kindling at her charms, he burned to clasp her in his amorous arms. And then? What then, dread spirit of the lyre? Rinaldo cried, and shook with maddening ire, and as he spake, up sprang the eager knight, stamped the firm earth, and seized his falchion bright. To golden climes of subterranean day, to fairyland he bore thy love away. There fly, but first these warning words attend, on them for safety and success depend. When threatening phantoms in their pathway stand, when threatening phantoms in thy pathway stand, and rouse the horrors of the fairyland, stand firm and trust to heaven and thy right hand. All threats and dangers fearlessly defy, but from kindness and temptation fly. Guard well thyself, oh, be to beauty blind, and leave thine eyes and every sense behind, or guard those fatal avenues to the mind. Eat not, drink not, of smooth deceit beware. Be not deluded by a gilded snare. There even the tiger hath an outside fair, and the deadliest plants the loveliest blossoms bear. Beware the damsel's soft voluptuous bed, beware the board with luring dainties spread. The silver lake, impetuous hero, fly where bathing damsels witch the gazing eye. Secure about thee bear the holy cross, and woe, woe to thee upon its loss. Then haste away, and ere aurora bright from yon tall mountain's oriental height precipitates her cataracts of light, in fairyland let brave Rinaldo be, where Crystalina weeps and waits for thee. Now the sweet voice by rising music drowned was heard no more, for all above, around, celestial music poured on every side, from echoing rocks its soft ethereal tide. With ghastly gaze, a while the hero stood, muttering his wrath in wild and frenzied mood. Then starting fiercely from his horrid trance, he smote the sounding cavern with his lance, and thus addressed the awe-inspiring seer. Let me be gone, the day is drawing near. But say, dread seer, where lies this land unknown? Where can I meet with cursed Oberon? The midnight darkness shrouds yon mountain horde. Point but the way. Rinaldo asks no more. The seer replied, First take this holy cross, and woe, woe to thee upon its loss. This buckler broad and glittering helm take, No spear can pierce them, and no force can break, and take this fatal and unerring spear, whose dire enchantments fiends and fairies fear. 'Twas from the moon by fire's volcanic thrown, by furies forged and dipped in. Shall I then, the hero said and frowned, and dashed the proffered weapons to the ground, shall Rinaldo on the martial field, gainst any foe's unequal armor wield? Shall I on magic, not on strength rely, on arms enchanted, not on bravery? When did this arm e'er fail on battle plain, or on the foe this sword descend in vain? This sword, the old companion of my side, faithful and sure, in utmost peril tried. If thou wouldst add new glory to my name, increase the danger, and augment the fame. Impetuous knight, replied the kindling sage, think not that I unequal war would wage. Against the weak I ne'er uplifted shield, nor shun the mighty on the martial field. Oh, 'twas not thus I fought in Palestine, my field of fame, if any fame be mine. When the bald Turk outnumbered thrice our host, yet mourned his fame, his fields and country lost. But now no aid can mortal power impart, Herculean arm, huge spear, or dauntless heart. For thou art doomed, proud champion, to oppose immortal and invulnerable foes. Thus spake the seer, and to the silent knight he gave the cross, the spear, and buckler bright. Then down the vale the hermit led the way. The knight pursued, impatient of delay. Dark was that vale, of tall gigantic wood, the grim abode of elves and beasts of blood. Couchant tiger screamed as they passed by, and on them wildly rolled his meteor eye. And the wolf sprang frighted from the crackling brake, and in their pathway coiled the hissing snake. High o'er their heads umbrageous oaks outspread their giant arms, and awful murmurs made. Scarce had they reached the center of the vale, when lo, black clouds before a northern gale came sweeping on, and with a dusky veil shrouded the moon. The mountain tops, oak crowned, tossed in the storm and echoed to the sound of trees uptorn and thunders rolling round. They sat them down beneath an aged oak, which though late riven by a thunder stroke, seemed tempest proof, and there the fearless knight waited impatient for returning light.